So first off, let's all start by taking a breath. And then I'm going to ask you to close your eyes and take the hand of somebody beside you. So today, we invite our ancestors, who I call our deads, to join us. So I want you to feel the blood of all your grandmothers before you flowing through your body and down into your hands and your fingers. And the lineage that goes back and back and back. And then gently squeeze the hand of your neighbor in recognition of your grandmothers meeting their grandmothers. Thank you, grandmothers, for bringing us together today. Thank you. And now they're all here. I love when they join us. Before we start, I want to thank the Celebrant Foundation and Institute. They're our sponsor today. I am a graduate of their course. Is anybody else here a graduate of their course, their online course? It is fabulous. It is deep training in ceremony, and I took funeral celebrancy, and they've been around since 2001, and if anybody wants to know more, you can look them up online or you can talk to me. This book was co-written with Donna Belk. Who here does not know Donna Belk? I know her. She's a mother of the home funeral movement. She's a beautiful, wonderful woman, and we are grandmothers. So we've asked our grandmothers to join us already, and Donna and I believe that when you become a grandmother, and you don't have to be an actual grandmother, but I think kind of an elder who is able to start to see the span of life behind you and in front of you, that life gets real and more beautiful and deeper. And that's the place we wrote this book from together. So I wanted you to see our grandchildren. But does Donna have another grandchild? Do we know? Or I think these are hers, and those are mine. Mine sitting on pumpkins. They grew out of pumpkins. So today, also joining us, and it wasn't in the schedule, but I'm so thrilled, Zen is here. And is there anybody that did not see the film last night? It's fine. It won't hurt our feelings. But so if you did, then you know her really well. You know her far better than you know me, I hope. And Amy Cunningham is another collaborator of mine, and so she's here to talk a little bit later. You can talk any time you want, but a little bit later on about what we've collaborated on, which is going to be a resource for all of you too. So I was thinking so much about what one thing would I like you to go away with, and my one thing turned into 17. So I've whittled that down to about 4. And I wanted to talk, before we get started with the book and stuff, just about ceremony and being a celebrant and ritual a little bit. It's a big subject, but the main thing that I've learned so far in my journey as a celebrant and a ceremonialist is to start to, I was trained as a funeral celebrant, so I was the funeral, and I worked on that a lot or did those. But then I came to see that sometimes, or many times, what some families need is more of a continuum of ritual that they can incorporate through the whole journey. So I want you to be thinking about ceremony and ritual as a continuum. And the other thing I want to offer is, again, when I was kind of new, I felt like, oh, I'm going to work really hard with this family and get all this, thing put together, and then I'm gonna be there presenting it, Where I've come to now is that's all true, and when I get there to present it, or that it's more of an offering and an invitation and a guide. The guide part is more working with the families to come up with what is possible, and so in that way, I'm the guide, right? I show up at a table full of very sad, confused people, and I just listen and ask a few questions and listen, and I start to get a sense of what's possible for them, and to start suggesting, you could think of this, or we could be outside, or because they may have a narrow view. That's different than saying this would be the best way to do it, and also I loved in the movie with Zen last night where she said she doesn't do eulogies. She has the family do it. Well, I work really hard at getting the families in, and they don't want any part of it. So I need to ask her how you do that. My families will say, no, I can't do it, I can't get up, I won't. I say, I'll stand beside you, someone can come with you.
As I say, in 25 years, I've never done a eulogy. I've read one for someone who couldn't read it, but they write it. So if they don't do it, it doesn't get done. It's that simple. Because there's something in that process for them which moves towards healing, but it's their story. I've got better things to do than sit and sweat those details. So for me, I see the ceremony, first of all, I say, what do you want that ceremony to serve? What purposes do you want it to serve? And so they are doing their own work immediately. They're saying, well, we want to do this, we want to celebrate their life, we want to be in our sadness, blah, blah, blah. So then I create that ceremony around that. But the fact that they've worked, they're already processing by doing that. And then I see that ceremony has a beginning, a middle, and an end. They are the middle, the people that knew that person, because the most important thing for them is to speak it, is to share it. So my work is in the beginning and the end, and it leads them into that moment, and it supports them. So you could see in the film, the family, the speaking, and that's so important for them, whatever they say. So I don't want to be sweating, they went to school here, they did this. And I also find that most people want to know the quality of the person, not so much the dates and the things. If they want to share that, great. But for me, it's who you are, the quality of who that person is, not what they were. That's where I'm coming from.
So.
And it works.
Yeah, well, I'm going to try it. I've tried everything. And I do get the families involved as much as possible, and they do. Every now and then there's a family that just won't. So anyway, I guess what I'm saying is, as the guide, that you're, as the celebrant, you're doing a lot of creation, of giving out ideas and expertise, of listening, and then also of stepping aside in a way, and we're going to talk about that a little bit, getting out of the way. It's really about the family. It's the same thing with home funerals. People this is where I was going to say permission, but invitation is fantastic word, or modeling, this is what is possible, but this is my view. It's not your show. It's theirs. It's their thing. It's them. So you're offering your expertise, and you're moving aside. You're standing aside. However that works. And like I said, we're going to talk about that. Let's talk about it right now. Can you see this? Because I made this after we talked, and I didn't have a lot of pictures.
Oh, okay.
But I called, Zen and I had a little chat out on the deck for about 15 minutes. And it was fascinating to me because I am somebody that is probably like so many here that senses or works with energy flows. I don't create them, but I feel into them, and then I help sort of smooth them or if they're bumpy and around. That I can do, and as I've done so many ceremonies, I find that field is a living, a sentient thing, is how it feels to me. And so we were talking about our energy fields when we're in ceremony or in group, and this group counts definitely, which is, for me, so far where I've gotten to is what I call the bubble, the ceremonial bubble. And what it feels like is I do all this work ahead of time, whatever it is. I prepare the space. I show up. I feel into the energy. I help it flow a little bit. And then I'm inviting, but all along, I'm inviting the people that are there, you people, to be the nutrients, be the thing that you bring your heart and bring your soul, bring your ancestors into this field. And at that point, I just move back. I keep doing my things, but I see, and you can feel it when it happens, if you're at a concert or a ceremony of some kind, when there's an alchemy that starts to begin, when the people's energy opens and connects with each other. And that, what I feel is a big bubble, fills up with that and becomes this deep magic of connection. And then, and also what she said about breaking people's hearts open or helping them be very present with the loss of someone who can never be replaced, who is gone from us, whose gifts will be gone from us. How will we live? How can we live without our person who had those gifts? Well, we have to, I think, feel that, and then bring them to, or help them understand that and because of that field and because of that connection, they can find, but look how we're connected. It's a feeling. We're here. We're still breathing. We're connected to each other. We're creating magic together, and then to lead on to hope from there. And then for me, the part that I feel is the most important part for me as a celebrant, which takes place invisibly, is to step absolutely out of that zone and just seal it up and release that bubble of that alchemy that's been created, which I think people call memory. oh, I remembered that funeral. It was the best funeral whatever. I remember that wedding ceremony. Well, I don't think it's a memory. If it's done well, and it's alive and accessible. I'm not married. My marriage is in trouble. Oh my God, I remember that ceremony. No, you can actually dip and reach right back into that alchemy and pull that back out. What all your people created on behalf of you. That's my take.
Can I speak to that?
Absolutely, because that was the bubble part.
Okay.
So one thing is, you might need the mic for him.
To speak into? Okay. So I just want to speak to this. I'm going to try and give it to you in a crash course because I'm really crashing Kateyanne's presentation.
I don't know what she's going to say.
And also, we've got limited time. So can you hold that for me, Amy? Sorry, thanks, darling. So for me, I used to think when I first started about holding space, which is generally where we all start as celebrants because that's what we think we have to offer. But over time, that's really transformed for me, and I see that as an old paradigm now. And what I see now is that we co-create that together. So the people already come, just like you come with an expectation, you bring whatever you bring, we bring whatever we bring. So as a celebrant, it's in the consultation. And at the kitchen table, I'm dancing with everybody. I'm finding their rhythm and meeting them wherever they are. And any of you that have spoken to me will have had that experience, that when you're talking to me, I'm absolutely there with you. I'm dancing with you with what your needs are in that conversation. So when they come to the funeral, it's their story. They're the ones affected by that death and the depth of their feelings. So I am coming with my prep. I'm offering my ceremony to them. They are offering me their response back, and I continue to offer. But it's like that infinity symbol of energy, because you have to be responding. It's no good just delivering that like that. You have to be sensitive to the response, which is what you're talking about with the energy, being in that. But you are co-creating that together all the time. And in that is their connection to the dead person. So even though I'm speaking to them, their energetic, their feelings are with the dead person who's over there, not with me. So, and I'm saying to people, close your eyes, be with your own thoughts and feelings. You don't even need to listen to me because, and that's what you're talking about, creating that bubble. But the other thing is, I don't want all that grief, all that emotion coming at me. I've got, I want to be still standing at the end of the ceremony and in life. And so energetically I do this. It's like Tai Chi. Anybody that does Tai Chi? I don't do that, but. So I see it coming at me. So I offer the part of least resistance, and I let that wave of energy go past, just like in the ocean. So none of it sticks to me, so I can stay standing, and I've actually got lighter and lighter, not heavier and heavier. And with it, the fabulous thing about energy is as they release those emotions and let them go past, they reform and they support you to stay standing there, just like water does. And so, by giving up their emotions, it allows you to stay standing, and you keep responding. Can you get it? And it's effortless, and it's all just moving all the time. It's a dance, and sometimes you have to just completely change it in the middle. But if you want to still be standing in 20 years of offering funeral after funeral after you have to let it go past. It's not yours. And be joyful that the more you do, the better you do your job, the more they release and give up. So the more comes in your direction, but you don't want it. So you have to work out how to get out of your own way, but get out of their way as well. So if you can see yourself like that, it works for me. So I'm offering that to you in case that helps. But it's the same concepts. It's just a different language and a way of being. But I know that you can't continue to be of service if you take on any of their stuff. It's not yours, it's theirs. Is it? So, I'm loving you.
Thank you.
And we're all just doing our own dance. You have to, we're in service and we're learning from them. We're offering to them, but they're offering to us. And so you're co-learning, co-creating. You have to be in it together. Amy.
Thanks.
No, it's beautiful. It works.
And
you don't burn out that way.
No, that's right.
on the journey of your own ceremonies, you evolve and grow and start to understand as you do it over. So I'm here. I talking with Zen was so wonderful to see that energy. And who knows? I mean, you can have the bubble and the flow, but whatever, you'll start to see it. Look for that. Feel the energy in the room and with the people, and work with that. So this book, Donna and I wrote because we felt that when people were in the midst of an actual home funeral or vigil or piece of it, that you may have a home funeral guide present, but that can be is different than someone that can stop and bring people in to a moment of mindfulness, and that these were opportunities or times when people can be, even though they're very intentional and working together, that they could possibly want a little something at that moment. So this is not a prescription at all. It's an offering of ideas along the continuum of someone dying, at death, after death, washing the body, that people, the daughter, the home funeral guide, whoever, the hospice nurse, these are people I've heard from, can pick it up and find something possibly there. And so it's not, here's a book and do this before death and do this da-da-da. No, it's, we're finding ourselves about to go into this moment of, say, preparing the body. And that seems pretty scary, or how do we do that? Or how do we all put ourselves together? And so I just wanted to read a little bit. The section on preparing the body has 3 different ceremonies and ceremony possibilities. And the way the book is set up is that it says when to use it, what your intention could be, what materials you might need, the preparation, which is almost always quiet yourself, and then a very short ceremony idea that can be completely changed. So these are, in preparing the body, these are washing the body, anointing and blessing the body, and dressing the body. So you could look through that and think, oh, wow, we could do this or that. And the little piece I want to talk about is anointing and blessing the body, which Donna wrote. And when to use it is after the body has been washed, but before it's dressed. And 2 things about this one are, she, in the back of the book, has a recipe for anointing oil, which she got from Ezekiel in the Bible, and then worked with her local herbalist to it was, I think, myrrh and frankincense, and added a few other things. So that recipe is there for you if you want to make it. And so this is using the oil and touching the body And this is the short blessing. So touching the eyes, may the eyes be blessed. We honor and remember the way your eyes looked upon us with love. Touching the nose with oil, may your nose be blessed. We honor and remember the vigor with which you breathed in life and encouraged us to do the same. May your mouth be blessed. We remember and honor your words and wisdom you spoke to us. May your heart be blessed. We remember and honor your heartfelt actions and the love you expressed so fully. May your hands be blessed. We remember and honor the work of your hands and their loving touch. May your feet be blessed. We remember and honor the path you walked. In honor, in presence, and in beauty, it is done. So that's it. And then dress the body. So is there anybody that does not have a copy of this book? Yeah, I only had 25 copies. Possibly, if someone here has a copy at home, they could share their copy with you to take, or you can get it on Amazon. Oh, there she is. That's just a preparing the body. Mm. And then, why do they matter? I think I'm talking to a group of people that know why they matter. And mostly, I think it just helps people come into the moment and be there. So I wanted to talk about and the idea of the continuum of ritual for a family. And maybe a lot of you have heard this story, but I think some haven't. This was a baby who was alive, Burton, there he is, and his family had gone through months of everything to find out what was happening. It was a birth trauma, and could he live? What would the quality of his life be? They worked with teams of wonderful hospital, teams of ethics people and doctors, and came to understand that he would always be about a 2-month-old in his development, possibly live a very long time because he had a very strong body and could be kept alive. And I think those things were fine for them, except that he was having seizures, about 100 a day, and he was on an adult-sized dose of anti-seizure stuff. And that Alicia, his mother's feeling was that he was uncomfortable, in pain, unhappy, and his lungs were just wrecked. And they kept thinking, they took him off of life support in the hospital and thinking that he wouldn't live because he was, being helped to breathe, and he did. But every breath was ragged and difficult. And so these were extraordinary parents, Alicia and Derek, and they were atheists, devout atheists. They didn't want anything, but they said that they felt that they needed something, and they called me to create a ceremony for when they started removing food. That was their decision, and then for a funeral ceremony about a week after he died. And when I went into their house, I never expected this as a celebrant, that I would go in and be sitting there holding this baby who was so beautiful and strong and alive. And we apologized. I said, "Do you have a candle?" And they said, "Oh my," they were. When I went into the house the first time, the parents were literally curled curled up with exhaustion and pain, and can you imagine? So we lit a candle, and I said, we're going to be talking about a lot of things, and I'm holding this baby, and let's acknowledge that to him. And they said, oh, we do that all the time because we feel he's part of this conversation. He did have this amazing life force. And so I listened to no, nothing spiritual, all curled up, but we feel, it was Alicia, we feel that there's something more that can be than this. They didn't know or think about a home funeral even. And I was really challenged to be thinking about, oh boy, I think, not that I'm a part of it, but I think we're looking at something way bigger than ritual for removing from life support and funeral ceremony. These people need a guide rope, like if you were in the Himalayas and you were on a ledge and you need something that's going to take you there, all the way there. And so I asked them, what are the big moments that you think are ahead of you? And I wanted to get an idea of what they thought the waypoints were, and if there were any that I thought were also part of it, and there were a few. And then when I went home that night, I did what I do when I freaking out, which is like, but their part of their problem was they had to figure out when to stop feeding him, and that it could take 14 days until he died, or it could be 5 days, and yet there were these what project managers call dependencies, like somebody's birthday was coming up and they wanted family around, and so I started to put this together. And so the other thing that happened in that 3-hour meeting the first time was that one of the points that Alicia said was what she called handing him over, that was going to be the hardest thing for her. And I said, what is that? Tell me a story, what that looks like. And she said, well, he dies, and then we call the funeral home, and about 5 minutes later, somebody's at the door, and Derek takes the baby to the door and hands him over, and I am under all the blankets in the house, in my bed, crying for 100 years. And so what came out of my mouth was, but you don't have to hand him over. And they looked at me, and she said immediately, that's not legal. And I said, oh, it is legal. Would you like to know more? And they said, we don't really know what you're talking about. And I said, oh, okay. You have a really solid plan A, which you've explained to me, and it includes the handing over thing. Would you like to hear about a plan B? And so they said, okay, and I explained what it could look like if they kept him at home and how I could help with that. Shar was nearby, that we had help for them. And they were skeptical and but very open. I mean, I stood up, I walked around, I said, look, this could be an altar. An altar? I've always wanted an altar. And then she's like, ooh. We looked at her husband. And the other thing I found out in that meeting, as I was listening deeply, thinking they need a guide rope and they don't want anything spiritual. And what makes their heart open to the sacred. And what I heard was that they love the mountains. They're extreme skiers, extreme snowboarders, not extreme mountain climbers, but mountain climbers. And I said later, not that day, but I said later to them, would you be interested in learning about the directions, the 4 directions, and the energy around them and the stories behind them? Yes, yes, yes. And so then I thought, oh, thank God, I have my through line. I can start creating some structure for them when we met for a small ritual of preparing, like getting their heads together before they start this journey. That was so important. And talking about the directions and starting to teach them about it. And they could feel into the directions because they understood being with the mother, being out there and feeling where the sun is and all of that. Anyway, so I went home that first night. I made this spreadsheet. I sent them information the next morning that I had promised, a few videos, which is very helpful, of other people that had had a home funeral, a connection to friends who had had a home funeral for their child, and a spreadsheet draft. And they said later, like, when we saw that, we knew you were just the right person. Because I was like, oh, I'm going to be able to work with these people really well. So we did, I handed them, I created and handed them a through line of resources, ceremonies that they could use themselves, and they did. They took it themselves. And so they were learning on a very deep level into this place that Burton changed them, and the directions changed them. And when he died, they did not hand him over. They put him in this. Well, here we go. It was 14 days of. Oh my gosh, just holding and waiting. And as we know, it became very beautiful, and I was not a part of any of this at all. I was just on hold. And when he died, they had said that they didn't want me to come over right then. But then when he did die, they called me and said, please come over. And when I got to their house, it was dark, and it was November and windy, and I came into the house, and it was very, very dark with just little twinkly lights, and a group of people who were giddy with love and joy, and that liminal space when you walk in and a group have been singing and praying and being together. And I don't think they had barely, of course, eaten in those 14 days. There was pizza and whiskey, and I was like, yes. And through this doorway were Alicia and Derek with their back to me, and the baby, naked, and they were tending to him just like parents do. And it was so beautiful. And they were so happy or in joy and bliss, in pain. But there he is. They had people over. Now she says that they felt shy, I think, about sharing this with their friend group, which would have been 35-ish-year-old people. And they were the first in that large group of theirs to go through anything like this. And so I don't think they invited in the community as much as they wish that they had once they had finished the whole thing. But they have to do what they did. So I just want to end on a happy note, which is, in the first picture, that's Lucia. And you can see Burton behind them on the wall. And in the second picture, now they have another baby, Cleo. So that's the story of Burton. But the takeaway that I'd like to share with you is that idea of a through line. Working with atheists, I'm not making that a specific thing. I'm saying everybody has a sense of the sacred in them. You might not use that word, but to find that and then go with that and help them, if you can. For this one, this is a big one, a big journey, was preparing to enter the journey, getting through the big points of it, having the funeral afterwards, but then having that resource of that way of thinking to take them on when things get even harder in a way, of course, after that's all done. And Derek told me, I was sitting, when I get in a lot of pain and confusion, I go and climb a mountain. And I was sitting on the side of a mountain and I was inconsolable. I felt so lost. And then I remembered about the directions and I started to just move through them. And I was transformed by that. And I was so grateful that they were open to and given the vision and tools to take it away and do that. So how are we on time? Does anybody know?
9:45.
You are? Oh, that's wonderful.
Can I add something on directions?
Oh, sure.
So
Maybe into the mic.
Can you very much. Great to have a beautiful assistant. So just to add to directions, because this might be helpful, there are actually at least 7 directions.
Yeah, that's true.
So you've got, the compass directions, which are all out, but then you've got above and below, but you have center. So because if you always stand on the edge, then you create a void, which is the opposite to what you want to do. There always has to be something in the center. So the baby in this story becomes the center of that story. But is there anybody that's Indigenous or First Nations in the room? Okay, so I'll just give you this. This is my experience with that. And it combines that whole thing of ancestral lineage. So for me, when I move in the world now, it took me a while to work it out. So we all come. But Indigenous people have this as their birthright because it's unbroken. But we have to relearn it because it's lost for us. So we come with our ancestral lineage like a hologram behind us. We come also with our tribe that we generally find in life, but they're born into. But we come with our family. And we come with whatever passes on from us. But we also come with our connection to land, to the earth from which we're born. And we come with our connection to spirit. And we all come to everything. So we are the embodiment. So some of it is a memory. And it comes back into what you're saying at the beginning. So you can be a smile or a memory on someone's face or when you remember something. But really what you want is to embody that. You are the embodiment of your life experience. And so those parents, that Burton will always be their firstborn. Mm-hmm. And in his death, even in his very creation in utero, he makes them parents. They are already family, whether he's born alive or not. And that transformation is always happening. But he becomes the center direction. So some of you that may make sense to some of you, for some it might not. But if you see that all of that comes to the table, all of that comes to the story, and it's just a much fuller, so you're talking to everyone. And for me, that makes me much more respectful to not just the person that's sitting in front of me, but to their whole embodiment of their life journey that they bring. And Burton brings that too, because that's all his lineage. He won't be going on. but his story goes on, and now it passes on to you, and he becomes part of your life and that journey, and you will take his story and Kateyanne's story into your experience if you are in a situation with someone who has a dead baby. So
the interminable days of his dying, after about 11 or 12 days, I woke up in the middle of the night and I could feel a story coming to me. It was like a mosquito and I was so tired. Go away, I'll get up in the morning and I'll listen. And the story was saying, no, you have to get up. And I said, finally, fine. I got up and I just started typing this story of Little Bear, which is what they called him. And it was a medicine story. That's what I call it. And I would love to share it with you, but I don't have it. And it was the story of a little bear up in ancestor world and with his tribe, and I framed it in the land where we live, out in Seattle in the Pacific Northwest, and with our indigenous people and our connection to cedar and salmon. And anyway, Little Bear was given a mission by the elders they said, we have a mission for you. And he was a very impatient little bear, and so he just said, yes, and he dived away before he heard the rest of the mission, which they chuckled and said anyway, which was to go and be a teacher for these people. And he dove down on his mission, and when he landed in the canoe with the parents, he found that he couldn't move and he couldn't talk, and he was actually a bear and they were people, and he was very, very different and completely helpless. And the mother fell in love with him instantly, and he fell in love with her instantly. And the father and Derek, in real life at that time, they weren't married yet, and he was a man who was not 100% in the embrace of what I felt in him, this extremely wonderful male, loving, loyal, protective energy, which is who he is, as though he hadn't stepped into it away, or this curled upness had diverted them, both of them, from embodying all of what they could. And so that was part of that vision, or the story, was that the father in the canoe turned around and saw this love and just completely surrounded his family with protection and care and love. And this love grew, and this light came out of them. And so when they were in their lodge, and the people thought that the bear was very weird and strange, this light just kept growing out of this lodge. And that is what was happening, of course, with them. This bonding and this love that kept growing. And so, and the story is also from the little bear's perspective of, wait a minute, what kind of mission is this? You know, I'm helpless. And then it was time, the elders called him back, and he said for the first time in his impatient little life, but I don't want to go back. I'm not ready. And they said, okay, you can have a little more time. Mm-hmm. And which was helpful, I think, part of the medicine of like, oh my gosh, how long is this going to take, kind of thing. And so they gave him some more time, and they gave the family more time. And then they called him back. And the story is much better than that, because I can't think of it all right now. But I said, email, hello people, I'm thinking of you, and a story came to me and I'm going to share it with you. It felt a little scary. I didn't want to be intrusive. But they told me that they printed it out and they read it aloud. There were, I guess, about 10 of them, and they read it aloud, and then they just read it again, and they read it again, and I read it again and again, and realized that it was, it was not my story. It came to me, and it was medicine, a medicine story for them. And anyway, so that's that. I have a
That's beautiful.
I have a website, the Emerge Foundation, and I have a blog, and this story is on there. The Little Bear story is not in there, but I will add it if anybody wants to come and read the actual story.
Did you say the Emerge Foundation?
Yes, I'll put that up here.
Was it before or after Burton left his body, died, that you got the story? The story?
It was as he was dying. So it was 12 days in. He died on the 14th or 15th day, so it was 12 days into the waiting that the story came. And it was very helpful.
Are they still atheists? Devout atheists?
They're
I love that
devout.
expression.
They're devout mountain climbers. Yeah, they're devout atheists whose no, they're not anymore. No, they're not. They're devout people in joy and love. When you go through that sort of thing, and you do it with your eyes open and your heart open and willing to learn and do things you never thought you would do. They got married. They have children. I have goosebumps because they're wonderful people. They were not my friends. I did not know them. They've become my friends, but very slowly, because I don't become friends with people that I work with. But I couldn't help myself because they're so wonderful. I wish they were here, actually. You would love them.
How do you not become friends with people you work with?
Well, I don't mean it to sound quite like that. It's easy to fall in love with all of you. It's easy to fall in love. I do. And it's a little bit maybe my version of what Zen was saying, that people in grief or extreme sadness, it can be like somebody drowning, and it's better to throw them some lifelines and resources and help, but they'll pull me down if I don't have those boundaries, at least for a while. But now I'm going to practice Tai Chi, so maybe that'll help too.
Well, I have to say, I have lots, because I live in I live in community, so I'm often at parties, and I did a big funeral which was incredibly sad for an amazing woman who jumped off a cliff, and about a month, it was as sad could be, and a month later I found myself in the street parade for the music festival, and I'm banging the saucepan, I'm carrying on. And when I look here, it's the mother, Mary, of the girl, Kirsten. And when I looked at her, I went, "Oh, Mary." And she said, "Yes." And we laughed in this parade. And then the next minute, we were in the hall, and the local choir had asked me to come and do spoken word in honour of her, because she was a member of their choir. So then she was back in the audience receiving this beautiful tribute from her choir. So you can dance with it and whatever. So I don't have a thing about not making. If I like them, they become my friends. If I don't like them, I don't bother. But whether it's rich or not. Anyway, it's what it is. But there was something I was going to say. Oh, about the profound. So for people like that who you describe, I love that, devout atheist. But so if they're resistant to the sacred, for me, really, it's the sacred's what it is. But we're in the mundane and the profound. And that's really, the profound is the profound, you know, and we all know when something shifts from the mundane to the profound. But religion doesn't have domination over the profound. We can find it in nature, we can find it in anything, in science, anything. So I just think that's sometimes a more useful language for people who say, don't give me any of your sacred shit, I don't want it. But they don't argue with the profound because they can feel it. And I said to someone this morning, it's like people lick their finger and they put it into the electric socket. And you know you're alive when someone else is dying. You know you're alive when you're in the presence of death and the mystery. And you are in the profound. And a lot of people don't want to go back into the mundane because it's tedious and dull in the mundane. And so fortunately, if you work with death, you get to be in the profound a lot. So it's a bit like being an extreme sports person all the time. Yeah. But you are dancing with joy. And, you know, there's a great piece from Pema Chodron about joy, which is 7 lines, and it's really, because joy encompasses everything. If I can find it on my phone, I could read it to you. But anyway, sorry, I went on there. But the profound is the point of that.
May I comment on something she just said?
Sure.
I just lost my husband recently in Cunningham, and that's not the point. But I want part of my grief that I'm going through, and what a lot of people go through from what I've read, is that, you know, I don't want to work right now. I love what I do. I own business, my own business, and for you. But I'm squirrely, and I don't want to work, and I think it's because you said. I don't want to go back to the mundane. I've just experienced the profound, and I don't really want to leave that yet.
No.
And nobody has put into words what I'm feeling. I mean, we've all read the symptoms of grief, and you might want to not work and stuff. But
I haven't read the symptoms of grief. I haven't read that.
Okay. Well, it's in all the grief things.
I don't do grief.
Yeah. But that's just the list. That's, yes, I'm feeling that. But it didn't. But it's never been explained to me why I might be feeling that way or why anyone might be feeling anything. But that totally explains why I'm feeling what I'm feeling. I don't want to leave that profound yet.
And you just have to be in it till it's done with you. And just be in it. Give yourself to it fully. I mean, you're still functioning, clearly. It's not like you're awash somewhere.
Right.
But you won't be the same, and you will probably be someone who experiences some degree of post-traumatic growth.
Yes.
That's right. Because that's what it offers us all. But culturally, we're conditioned, you know, that, and so that whole grief wash is, I'm not so interested in that, because anybody can have that. But what people need to get is what else is available, which isn't so available in the supermarket. You know, you need to go to the deli.
That's right. Last night we said that post-traumatic growth, because that's unconsciously.
Yeah, and
it's like, okay, well, I'm reading, but what can I do with this? How can I
Enjoy it. It's yours to enjoy. It's the alchemy of your love transformed by that death, and it's evolving into something new. And you have to let it do itself to you. You can't do it. It is doing it to you. And then you'll pop out and you'll just think, fuck. But everything is different. Every day you'll be seeing everything differently, more bright, you know, deeper. It's the profound. Enjoy it.
So I want to hear what you have to say, and yeah, okay.
In my earlier
It's 10:07.
I was involved in childbirthing and assisting people with childbirthing, like a doula. And I love that because exact same reason. It's profound. It's the most authentic human experience, and people were real and authentic and joyful at that time. And this is just the flip side of that. And so
No, it's the same. It's not the flip side. It's the same.
Yeah.
7 minutes.
Okay. Let's let Amy have her time, and then, because we could talk forever, and then we will.
No pressure, Amy.
Well, maybe we'll have a few minutes, or we can get together in another place. So this is what Amy and I worked on, and this is a resource for you if you want to check it out. So Amy?
May I speak to how it came to be?
Sure.
I don't know that this is working, is it?
It's going to him.
Okay, lovely. As a funeral director and celebrant, I was sitting at tables with families who said and presented to me as screwed up. They said, "Oh, we're so screwed up. My husband's Jewish. I'm a lapsed Catholic. Mom who we're honoring, didn't have any faith at all until she fell in love with the Mormon chaplain at the nursing home. And then my brother-in-law is a devout Buddhist, and my sister goes to yoga workshops. So how are we going to plan this funeral?" And when that happens, I smile and I think, oh man, I am just in my best chair, in my sweet spot. Because it's so easy to say, you are normal and you are the American mainstream. And I guess the world mainstream. I mean, this is what's happening, and this is what you're all seeing with your ceremonies. And then it was quite time consuming because these kinds of families were then emailing me, what are we going to read? And when I began, I would send them whatever I could find in my own Google searches under the search funeral poetry. I'd send them links. Here's a site that has funeral poetry. And they'd scramble through that and sometimes find something. And then I began to send specific poems. I would cultivate my own favorites. I said, how about this Emily Dickinson? Oh, yes, we love that. So we would cobble together this service. But then it hit me as a blogger, already blogging about funeral ideas, that there could be a separate site, I initially thought, for readings and ceremony templates. You know, how to do a green burial procession and what are the best readings involving the out of doors and nature and returning to the soil. There were particular ceremonies that were recurring in my work. So I love the platform Squarespace. Do any of you guys, have you built a site on Squarespace? I do recommend it. So I started with Squarespace, and I even built the About Us page before I even showed it to Kateyanne. I put her photo up. I put my photo up, and I thought, Kateyanne's the one. I'm just going to build this site, and we'll figure it out. And it was like Beshert. It was meant to be. And she is so brilliant. And she came up with these 9 moments. Moments that people don't identify as opportunities for ceremony. Families have been finding these moments of bewilderment, and funeral directors have not addressed the needs at these moments in any way. The cemetery in Brooklyn came to me. Let's see. Where's the one? Oh, go to Ceremonies. This is the language thing. Here are the ceremonies. The local crematory came to me and said, Amy, why aren't people buying our niches? They're cremating here, but they're taking the remains away and putting them in a closet. And I said, I think they're not buying your niches because they don't have language for that moment where they put the niche in. They don't see that as a thing where you could call clergy in or have a group assembled. So we've now got ceremonies for putting an urn in the wall. We have ceremonies for witnessed cremation. And if it's not a ceremony template, it's an article about the moment. And we're going to get more. I see opportunities for adapting Jewish liturgy. I used to say to a colleague at the funeral home, if you started reading Roman Catholics, the Episcopalian Book of Common Prayer, they would thank you for it. Because I think Catholic, sorry if I'm offending anyone, Catholic language is very dry. And so I think there are ways to bring in contemporary touches, mix it up. And families, really today, I think some clergy might be offended or thinking I'm being religiously promiscuous to dabble in it all. But that was the idea. to this is the new family, this is where we're at, and this is what we should serve people. So this is the new inspired funeral. It's very deep and rich. I'm going on to see how people are using it, and they're not yet fully exploring
So
the
what
richness.
happens when you come to this language, if I don't have internet, but if you clicked on before death, what would show up would be about a dozen possible readings or poems or blessings that would fit into something that you could put together, you or the family themselves, or just in my imagination, somebody comes here for ideas and they just sink in to the poetry, which I think is the language for speaking to the profound, and sometimes we can't even access it. We're like, okay, poetry, but then when you're in the thing, when your finger is in the light socket, there aren't words, but poetry can speak to that. So each of these sections has poetry, blessings, prayers that Amy and I love.
Over the weekend, because I'm out of town, a death occurred in my practice, and it's going to be, I offered her a home funeral. She said, no, we don't want that. We just want a few hours with the body, then a witnessed cremation. So because I wasn't there for the transfer from the house, I often, as a funeral director, rush to the hospital or the home.
Moving the body.
I wasn't going to be there because I'm here at the conference, so I sent her the link to here's some readings for moving the body. You might want to read this when the men arrive. And that softens that moment so much and made me feel good, like, oh man, I'm off the hook because she's got those readings. So it's a real lifesaver. I think it's going to be a good thing.
Right, and so so there's the journey, and there's language for the journey as you go into each of those things. And then these are just, again, templates and ideas for people that maybe haven't thought, oh, we could have a niche ceremony, or what do we say at a witness cremation? And
Scatterings.
yeah,
People don't know the language.
this goes on. It didn't all fit in the page, but there's ideas for pet ceremony, Amy's father's order of service. So these are just things to help people collect their thoughts.
I think we're out of time.
Are we out of time?
TheInspiredFuneral.com. And check the upper menu because there's a lot there. In
Well,
addition to what's on the
actually,
homepage.
there is a lot there, and in my last moment, I'll tell you, if you look across that top bar, that there's also create an obituary, which is what Amy's going to be talking about
In the
next
workshop.
in 15 minutes or whatever. So, and it's fabulous. So take a look at that.
And anybody who wants to break the rules and stay for 2 seconds, I want to read you Joy, because I think it's very much what you're talking about. And as a celebrant, it will support you. So if you want to be a good person and leave now and stick on time, good on you.
It's short.
Okay. So poetry I find is best heard with the ears, and so you just close your eyes and let it sink in because you don't need to look. And this is from Pema Chodron, it's not mine. Whether it is connecting with the genuine heart of sadness and the messy bits of our lives, or connecting with vision and expansion and openness, what is real is all included in well-being. It is all included in joy. Joy is not about pleasure as opposed to pain, or cheerfulness as opposed to sadness. Joy includes everything. Go, Pema.
Thank you. Thank you.